It was a calm Friday evening in the small town of Maplewood, where life moved at a slow and predictable pace. The sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows across the streets and painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. At Linda's place, a cozy diner on the corner of Main Street, the usual hum of conversation filled the air. The diner wasn't fancy. Its walls were lined with faded wood paneling, and the vinyl booth showed signs of wear, but it had a charm that made people feel at home. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's name, or at least their regular order. Mike Carter sat in his usual spot, a corner booth near the window. He liked this seat because it gave him a perfect view of the parking lot outside. From here he could watch cars pull in and out, see families arriving for dinner, or catch glimpses of truck drivers stopping by for a quick cup of coffee before heading back on the road. Mike wasn't particularly interesting himself. He worked as an accountant at a firm downtown and spent most evenings either at the diner or in front of the TV at home. But he enjoyed observing people, piecing together stories about their lives based on little details. A tired mother juggling two toddlers, a teenager nervously waiting for a date, or a businessman scrolling through emails while sipping black coffee. Tonight, the diner was busier than usual. A group of kids occupied one of the larger tables, laughing loudly as they shared a plate of fries. Across from them, an older couple sat quietly, holding hands over their milkshakes. Behind the counter, Lisa Miller moved with practiced efficiency, balancing trays of food and refilling drinks without missing a beat. Lisa was only 24, but she carried herself with a maturity beyond her years. Her blonde hair was tied back in a neat ponytail, and her uniform, though slightly wrinkled, was always clean. She had been working at Linda's place for nearly 2 years now, and she knew almost all the customers by name. As Lisa cleared a table near the door, the bell above the entrance jingled softly, signaling new arrivals. She glanced up automatically, expecting to see another familiar face. Instead, 4 men stepped inside, their presence immediately changing the atmosphere of the room. They wore leather jackets covered in patches that hinted at a rough lifestyle, and their heavy boots thudded against the tiled floor as they walked in. One of them, a tall man with a scruffy beard and piercing eyes, scanned the room like he owned the place. His name was Jake, though no one in the diner knew that yet. The others followed closely behind him, their expressions unreadable but intimidating nonetheless. The chatter in the diner grew quieter as the men claimed a large booth near the center of the room. Some of the patrons exchanged uneasy glances, while others pretended not to notice. Mike, still seated in his corner booth, watched curiously. He didn't recognize these men, which was unusual for a town as small as Maplewood. Strangers didn't pass through often, especially ones who looked like they belonged to a biker gang. Still, Mike told himself there was no reason to panic. Maybe they were just passing through, looking for a bite to eat before continuing on their journey. Lisa hesitated for a moment before approaching the newcomers. She forced a polite smile onto her face, clutching her notepad tightly in one hand. "Hi there," she said brightly, though her voice wavered ever so slightly. "What, can I get you guys tonight?" Jake leaned back in his seat, crossing his arms over his chest. His gaze traveled slowly up and down Lisa's frame, making her feel uncomfortable. When he finally spoke, his tone was mocking. "How about some service faster than this?" he sneered, even though they'd only just sat down. His friends chuckled, clearly amused by his comment. Lisa swallowed hard, forcing herself to maintain her composure. "Of course," she replied quickly, scribbling something on her notepad. "I'll have your drinks right out." As Lisa hurried away, Mike couldn't help but feel a pang of unease. There was something about the way Jake had spoken to her, something cruel and dismissive, that set off alarm bells in his mind. He considered saying something, maybe stepping in if things escalated, but he decided against it. After all, what could he do? He was just a middle-aged accountant with a fondness for crossword puzzles, not exactly the type of person who confronted troublemakers. Back at the counter, Lisa relayed the biker's order to Linda, the diner's owner. Linda raised an eyebrow when she heard the description of the men but didn't say anything. "Just keep an eye on them," she advised quietly, patting Lisa's shoulder reassuringly. Lisa nodded, steeling herself for whatever might come next. She grabbed a tray and headed toward the kitchen, trying to focus on the task at hand rather than the knot forming in her stomach. Meanwhile, the bikers seemed content to dominate the space around them. Their laughter was loud and obnoxious, drawing annoyed looks from nearby tables. Jake flicked a toothpick between his teeth, his sharp eyes darting around the room as if daring someone to challenge him. Every so often, he would glance toward Lisa, watching her every move with a predatory intensity that made her skin crawl. She tried to avoid looking directly at him, keeping her head down and focusing on her work. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was about to happen. When the food was ready, Lisa carefully loaded the plates onto a tray and carried them over to the bikers' table. She placed each dish in front of its intended recipient, offering a polite "here you go" as she did so. Just as she turned to leave, Jake reached out and grabbed her wrist. Startled, Lisa froze, her heart pounding in her chest. "Hey, sweetheart," Jake drawled, his grip tightening painfully. "You forgot my napkin." Lisa stammered an apology, reaching for the napkin dispenser on the table. But before she could grab one, Jake yanked her closer, his smirk widening. "Don't rush off so fast," he said, his breath hot against her ear. "We're not done with you yet." His friends laughed again, egging him on. Lisa pulled her arm free, her cheeks burning with embarrassment and anger. Without another word, she retreated to the safety of the counter, her hands trembling as she set the tray down. Mike watched the entire exchange with growing frustration. He wanted to intervene, to tell Jake to leave Lisa alone, but fear held him back. What could he possibly do against 4 burly men? So instead, he stayed silent, sipping his coffee and hoping the situation wouldn't escalate further. But deep down, he knew better. Something about the way Jake carried himself, the arrogance, the cruelty, told Mike that this wasn't going to end well. And then, just as the tension in the room reached its peak, a figure entered the diner. No one paid much attention to him at first. He was dressed casually in jeans and a plain t-shirt, blending seamlessly into the background. But as he took a seat at a table near the entrance, a few patrons recognized him. Whispers began to spread throughout the diner, hushed voices murmuring, his name, John Cena. Cena, oblivious to the sudden stir he had caused, picked up a menu and started browsing it casually. He hadn't come to Maplewood seeking attention. In fact, he preferred to keep a low profile during his travels. But fate had other plans. As he glanced around the room, taking in the scene before him, his eyes landed on Lisa standing nervously behind the counter. Then he noticed Jake and his friends, their aggressive energy impossible to ignore. Cena frowned slightly, setting the menu aside. Whatever was about to happen, he realized, wouldn't be good. And if there was one thing John Cena couldn't stand, it was seeing someone being treated unfairly. For now, though, Cena remained seated, waiting patiently to see how things would unfold. Little did anyone know, including Jake and his crew, that their actions, or rather their lack of decency, were about to bring them face to face with someone far stronger than they could have imagined. Jake's grip on Lisa's wrist had sent a ripple of fear through the diner, but Lisa managed to pull away and retreat to the counter. Her hands trembled as she reached for the napkin dispenser, her mind racing. She knew better than to argue with someone like Jake, especially when he was surrounded by his friends. But the humiliation burned in her chest, making it hard to breathe. She tried to focus on her work, refilling coffee cups and delivering plates to other tables. But her movements were stiff and mechanical. Every time she passed the biker's booth, she could feel their eyes on her, heavy and unwelcome. At the counter, Linda noticed Lisa's distress and stepped closer. "You okay?" she whispered, her voice low so the bikers wouldn't overhear. Lisa nodded quickly, though her red-rimmed eyes told a different story. "I'm fine," she muttered, forcing a smile that didn't reach her face. Linda frowned but didn't push the issue. Instead, she glanced toward Mike, who sat in his usual booth sipping his coffee. He caught her gaze and gave a slight shrug, as if to say, "What can we do?" Linda sighed and returned to the kitchen, leaving Lisa to handle the situation on her own. The bikers, meanwhile, seemed to grow louder and more obnoxious by the minute. They laughed at inside jokes no one else understood, their voices booming across the room. Jake leaned back in his seat, chewing loudly on a piece of steak while flicking crumbs onto the floor. When Lisa approached to refill their drinks, he smirked up at her. "About time," he said, tapping his empty glass against the table. His tone was mocking, dripping with disdain. Lisa bit her lip to keep from snapping back and poured the soda without meeting his gaze. As she bent down to pick up the tray, Jake suddenly knocked over his glass. The sticky liquid spilled across the floor, splashing onto Lisa's shoes. For a moment, everything went quiet. Lisa froze, staring at the mess. Then Jake barked out a laugh. "Oops," he said, his voice dripping with fake innocence. "Looks like you've got some cleaning to do." His friends joined in, their laughter echoing through the diner. Lisa forced herself to stay calm. "No problem," she said softly, grabbing a towel from the counter. She knelt down to clean up the spill, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. The other customers watched silently, unsure of what to do. Some looked away, unwilling to get involved, while others exchanged worried glances. Mike clenched his fists, under the table, his jaw tightening. He wanted to say something, anything, but fear held him back. What could he possibly do against 4 men twice his size? But Jake wasn't done yet. As Lisa wiped up the soda, he leaned forward and delivered a sharp punch to her shoulder. The blow caught her off guard, sending her sprawling onto the floor. The sound of the impact echoed through the diner, followed by stunned silence. Lisa gasped, clutching her arm as tears welled up in her eyes. She scrambled to her feet, her face pale and trembling. "Why did you do that?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Jake sneered at her, his expression cold and unapologetic. "Maybe you'll learn to move faster next time," he said, his tone casual, as if punching someone was no big deal. His friends roared with laughter, slapping the table in amusement. The tension in the room grew unbearable. No one dared to speak or even move. It felt like time had stopped, leaving everyone frozen in place. In the corner near the entrance, John Cena observed the scene with growing anger. He had been quietly enjoying his meal, trying to blend in and avoid attention, but this was too much. Seeing Lisa cower in fear, her face streaked with tears, stirred something deep inside him. Cena wasn't the type to sit idly by while someone was treated unfairly. He set his fork down and pushed his plate aside, his appetite gone. Slowly he stood up, his tall frame drawing immediate attention. The movement caught Jake's eye and he turned to look at Cena, his brow furrowing in confusion. "Who the hell are you?" Jake demanded, his voice sharp and aggressive. Cena didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a step closer, his presence commanding despite his calm demeanor. The other diners watched nervously, unsure whether to cheer or run for cover. Even Mike, still seated in his booth, found himself holding his breath. Cena stopped a few feet away from the biker's table and crossed his arms over his chest. His expression was unreadable, but there was a steely glint in his eyes that made Jake hesitate for a moment. "That wasn't very nice," Cena said finally, his voice calm but firm. The words hung in the air, simple yet powerful. For a second, no one spoke. Then Jake burst out laughing, his friends joining in as if Cena had just told the funniest joke in the world. "Oh, come on," Jake scoffed, leaning back in his seat again. "You think you're gonna lecture me? Get lost, buddy, this ain't your business." His tone was dismissive, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Cena didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took another step forward, closing the distance between them. The laughter died down as the bikers realized Cena wasn't backing off. "Actually," Cena said, his voice steady and measured, "it is my business when someone gets hurt for no reason." He glanced briefly at Lisa, who stood behind the counter, clutching a dish towel to her chest. Her wide eyes met his for a split second before she looked away, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. Cena returned his attention to Jake, his stance relaxed but ready. "And I don't think hitting someone half your size makes you tough. It makes you a bully." Jake's smirk faltered, replaced by a scowl. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone who looked like they could crush him with one hand. "Listen, pal," he growled, standing up to face Cena. The two men were almost the same height, but Cena's muscular build gave him an undeniable advantage. Still, Jake refused to back down. "You don't know who you're messing with." Cena raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Do you really want to find out?" he asked, his tone deceptively calm. The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken consequences. Jake hesitated, his bravado wavering. He glanced at his friends, who shifted uncomfortably in their seats. None of them moved to defend him, sensing that this stranger wasn't someone to be trifled with. For a moment, the entire diner seemed to hold its breath. Jake clenched his fists, torn between attacking Cena and walking away. Finally, he let out a frustrated growl and threw a punch aiming straight for Cena's face. But Cena saw it coming. With lightning-fast reflexes, he dodged the blow and countered with a swift strike to Jake's midsection. The force of the punch sent Jake stumbling backward, knocking over his chair as he fell. The other bikers jumped to their feet, ready to jump into the fray. But Cena held up a hand, his expression unchanged. "Last chance to walk away," he warned, his voice carrying an edge of authority that brooked no argument. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier bravado evaporating. They weren't cowards, but they weren't stupid either. Something about Cena's calm confidence made them realize they were outmatched. After a long, tense moment, Jake muttered a curse under his breath and gestured for his friends to follow him. The group stormed out of the diner, slamming the door behind them. The sound of their motorcycles revving up outside signaled their departure, leaving behind a trail of muttered threats and angry glares. Once they were gone, the room erupted into applause. Customers cheered and clapped, some even standing up to show their appreciation. Linda rushed over to Cena, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We owe you one." Cena smiled gently, brushing off the praise. "Just doing the right thing," he replied simply. Lisa, still shaken but grateful, approached him timidly. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. Cena placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "No one deserves to be treated like that," he told her. "You did nothing wrong." Mike finally left his booth and joined the others, shaking Cena's hand firmly. "Never thought I'd see John Cena save the day in real life," he joked, breaking the tension. Everyone laughed, and the mood in the diner shifted from fear to relief. Cena stayed for a little while longer, chatting with the staff and customers, but he declined offers of free food or drinks. "I'm just glad I could help," he said modestly before slipping on his sunglasses and stepping outside. As he walked toward his car, the cheers of the diner patrons followed him. Later that night, word spread across social media about what had happened at Linda's place. Videos of the incident went viral, with headlines proclaiming, "John Cena saves waitress from biker bullies." Despite the attention, Cena remained humble, tweeting simply, "Just doing the right thing." Back at the diner, Lisa returned to work with a renewed sense of strength. And Mike? Well, he decided to start carrying pepper spray in case any more troublemakers showed up. But everyone agreed they'd never forget the night John Cena walked into their lives and proved that heroes really do exist. The applause in the diner slowly died down, but the energy remained electric. People were still buzzing about what had just happened, replaying the scene in their minds like it was a movie they couldn't quite believe was real. Lisa stood behind the counter, her hands gripping the edge as she tried to steady herself. Her heart was racing, and though the immediate danger had passed, she felt like she was floating somewhere between relief and disbelief. She glanced toward John Cena, who was now leaning casually against the wall near the entrance, his arms crossed and his expression calm. Linda, the diner's owner, wiped her hands on her apron and approached Cena with gratitude written all over her face. "I can't thank you enough," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You didn't have to do that, but you did, and I'll never forget it." Cena smiled warmly, brushing off her thanks with a small wave of his hand. "It's not about thanks," he replied. "It's about standing up when it matters." Mike, still standing nearby, chimed in. "Yeah, seriously. That was something else. I mean, most people would have just sat there and done nothing, but you. He trailed off, shaking his head in admiration. Cena chuckled softly, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. I'm just glad I was here, he said simply. That's all. Lisa finally found the courage to step forward. Her cheeks were still flushed, but there was a newfound determination in her eyes. Thank you, she said again, this time louder and more confident. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here. Cena turned to look at her, his gaze kind but firm. You handled yourself well, he told her. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small. You're stronger than you think. The words hit Lisa like a warm wave, washing away some of the fear and shame she'd been carrying since Jake punched her. She nodded, blinking back tears. For the first time that evening, she felt like maybe things were going to be okay. Linda patted her shoulder reassuringly before turning back to Cena. Can we get you anything? A meal on the house? Dessert? Anything? Cena shook his head politely. No, really, I'm fine. Just happy I could help. He glanced around the room, taking in the faces of the other customers, many of whom were still watching him with awe. Some even pulled out their phones, snapping pictures or recording quick videos. Cena noticed but didn't seem bothered. Instead, he gave them a friendly nod, the same way he might greet fans at a wrestling event. Y'all take care of yourselves, all right? He said, raising his voice just enough for everyone to hear. The room erupted into another round of applause, softer this time but no less heartfelt. As Cena prepared to leave, Mike walked over to him one last time. Hey, listen, Mike began, scratching the back of his neck nervously. This is gonna sound weird, but can I shake your hand again? Like properly? I mean, how often does someone meet John Cena in a diner in Maplewood, right? Cena laughed, extending his hand. Sure thing, he said, giving Mike's hand a firm shake. And hey, next time you see trouble brewing, don't hesitate to step in. Sometimes all it takes is one person to change the outcome. Mike nodded, feeling a mix of pride and inspiration. As Cena turned to walk out the door, the entire diner clapped once more, sending him off with a hero's farewell. Outside, the cool night air greeted him as he slipped on his sunglasses and headed toward his car. Before getting in, he paused for a moment, glancing back at the diner. Through the window, he could see Lisa laughing with Linda, her earlier fear replaced by a sense of triumph. It was a small victory, but sometimes those were the ones that mattered most. Later that night, word of the incident spread quickly. Someone posted a video online showing Cena stepping in to defend Lisa, and within hours, it went viral. Social media lit up with comments praising Cena for his actions. Real-life superhero, one user wrote. Proof that celebrities are human too, added another. News outlets picked up the story, dubbing Cena a modern-day hero. Despite the sudden fame, Cena kept his response simple. In a tweet posted late that night, he wrote, Just doing the right thing. Everyone deserves to feel safe. Back at Linda's place, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could get after such an extraordinary event. Lisa stayed late to clean up, her mind replaying every detail of the evening. At first, she had been terrified, convinced that Jake and his friends would ruin her night, or worse. But then Cena had stepped in, and everything changed. She realized that bravery wasn't about being fearless. It was about standing up even when you were scared. And seeing someone like Cena, a man known worldwide for his strength and charisma, act so calmly and decisively had inspired her in ways she couldn't fully put into words. Linda joined her behind the counter, stacking plates and wiping down surfaces. You holding up okay? She asked gently. Lisa nodded, managing a small smile. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? Who would have thought John Cena would show up tonight? Linda chuckled. Well, I guess fate has a funny way of working things out. Still, I'm proud of you. You handled yourself with grace under pressure. Lisa blushed at the compliment but appreciated the sentiment. Thanks, Linda. I couldn't have done it without him, though. Linda tilted her head thoughtfully. Maybe not. But remember, heroes come in all shapes and sizes. Tonight, Cena was the big guy stepping in. But tomorrow it could be you, or me, or anyone else. We all have the power to make a difference, even in small ways. The conversation lingered in Lisa's mind long after she left the diner and drove home. Her apartment was quiet, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. She kicked off her shoes and sank onto the couch, pulling her knees to her chest. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to breathe deeply, letting the weight of the evening settle over her. It had been terrifying, yes, but also transformative. She felt stronger, braver, like she'd faced something dark and come out the other side unbroken. Meanwhile, across town, Mike sat in his living room, staring at the TV screen. The news was covering the incident at Linda's place, playing clips of Cena confronting Jake and the bikers. Mike leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. He couldn't stop thinking about what Cena had said to him before leaving the diner. Sometimes all it takes is one person to change the outcome. Those words stuck with him, rolling around in his mind like a mantra. The next morning, Mike decided to do something he hadn't done in years: volunteer at the local community center. He figured if Cena could inspire an entire diner full of strangers, maybe he could find a way to make a difference too, even if it was on a smaller scale. When he arrived at the center, he signed up to help tutor kids in math, something he'd always been good at but never shared with others. The coordinator welcomed him warmly, and by the end of the day, Mike felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced in a long time. At the diner, business boomed over the weekend. Curious locals and tourists alike flocked to Linda's place, eager to sit in the same booth where Cena had eaten or stand near the spot where he'd confronted the bikers. Linda joked that they should rename the diner Cena's Corner, but deep down she was grateful for the boost in morale. Even Lisa seemed to glow with confidence, her usual cheerful demeanor shining brighter than ever. Customers complimented her resilience, and she took each comment to heart, using it as fuel to keep moving forward. By Sunday evening, the excitement had begun to die down, but the impact remained. Lisa tucked a note into her apron pocket, a reminder she'd written to herself during her shift. Be brave, stand tall, you are stronger than you think. She smiled as she read the words, knowing they were true. And though she doubted she'd ever see John Cena again, she knew his actions had left an indelible mark, not just on her but on everyone who had witnessed that unforgettable night at Linda's place. The days following the incident at Linda's place passed quickly, but the memory of that night lingered in the minds of everyone who had been there. For Lisa, it felt like a turning point, a moment when she realized her own strength and worth. She started to carry herself differently, standing a little taller and speaking with more confidence. The fear that had gripped her during the confrontation with Jake slowly faded, replaced by a quiet determination to never let anyone treat her poorly again. It wasn't just about what John Cena had done for her. It was about how his actions had awakened something inside her. Linda noticed the change in Lisa almost immediately. "You've got a fire in you now," she remarked one morning as they opened the diner together. Lisa smiled, tying her apron around her waist. "I guess I do," she admitted. "I don't know if I would have found it without everything that happened." Linda nodded knowingly. Sometimes life throws challenges our way to teach us lessons we didn't even know we needed. Word of the incident continued to spread throughout Maplewood, turning it into the talk of the town. People stopped by the diner not only to eat, but also to hear first-hand accounts from Lisa and Linda. Some customers asked Mike questions too, since he'd been seated close enough to witness the entire event. At first, Mike felt awkward being treated like a minor celebrity, but he soon grew accustomed to sharing his side of the story. He always made sure to give credit where it was due, emphasizing Cena's role as the real hero. One afternoon, a group of high school students came into the diner, giggling and whispering excitedly among themselves. They sat at a booth near the window and ordered milkshakes. When Lisa approached to take their order, one of the girls shyly asked, "Is it true? Did John Cena really save you from those bikers?" Lisa laughed softly, touched by the curiosity in the girl's voice. "Yeah, it's true," she replied. He stepped in when no one else did. It was pretty amazing. The students listened intently as Lisa recounted the events of that night, their eyes wide with admiration. One boy piped up, "That's so cool. I bet you weren't scared at all." Lisa hesitated before answering honestly. "Actually, I was terrified, but sometimes even when you're scared, you have to stand your ground." The kids nodded thoughtfully, clearly inspired by her words. After they left, Lisa couldn't help but smile. Maybe her story could encourage others to find courage in difficult situations. Meanwhile, Mike threw himself into his new volunteer work at the community center. Tutoring kids in math turned out to be more rewarding than he'd expected. The children looked up to him, eager to learn and quick to laugh at his corny jokes. One boy, named Ethan, reminded Mike of himself at that age, quiet, unsure of himself, but full of potential. During their sessions, Mike often shared bits of wisdom he'd picked up over the years, including the lesson he'd learned from Cena. It only takes one person to make a difference. Ethan soaked up every word, asking questions and practicing problems with newfound enthusiasm. By the end of the month, his grades had improved significantly, and his parents thanked Mike profusely. "You've made such a big impact on him," Ethan's mom said, tears in her eyes. Mike felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't set out to change anyone's life. He'd simply wanted to contribute in some small way. But seeing the effect he'd had on Ethan filled him with pride. Back at the diner, Linda decided to host a special event to celebrate the kindness and bravery displayed during the infamous biker incident. She called it Heroes Night and invited the entire town to attend. Flyers went up around Maplewood advertising free slices of pie and live music performed by a local band. Linda hoped the evening would serve as a reminder that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they chose to act with compassion and courage. On the night of the event, the diner buzzed with excitement. Families packed the booths while others stood chatting near the counter. Even Mayor Peterson showed up, shaking hands and posing for photos with delighted patrons. At the center of it all was Lisa, who wore a bright red dress instead of her usual uniform. She greeted guests warmly, her smile lighting up the room. For once, she wasn't just the waitress. She was the star of the evening. As the band played soft tunes in the background, Linda took the microphone to address the crowd. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, her voice warm and steady. "We're here to celebrate acts of kindness and bravery and to honor the heroes among us, those who step up when it matters most." She paused, glancing toward Lisa. Like Lisa here, who handled herself with grace under pressure, and like John Cena, who showed us that doing the right thing doesn't require fanfare, it just requires heart. The audience erupted into applause, cheering loudly for both Lisa and Cena. Though Cena wasn't present, his schedule kept him traveling across the country. The sentiment remained strong. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Cena forever," which prompted laughter and more clapping. Lisa blushed, waving sheepishly at the crowd. When the noise died down, Linda continued, "But let's not forget that each of us has the power to be a hero in our own way. Whether it's standing up for someone, lending a helping hand, or simply spreading kindness, we can all make a difference." After Linda's speech, the festivities kicked into full swing. Kids danced to the music, couples shared desserts, and strangers struck up conversations about random acts of kindness they'd experienced or witnessed. Mike mingled with the crowd, feeling a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in years. He spotted Lisa chatting animatedly with a group of teenagers, her face glowing with happiness. Nearby, Linda chatted with Mayor Peterson, discussing ways to promote community service initiatives in Maplewood. As the night wore on, Lisa found herself reflecting on how much had changed since the biker incident. Before that night, she'd often doubted her ability to handle tough situations. Now she felt empowered, knowing she could rely on her inner strength when necessary. She also realized how important it was to surround herself with supportive people, like Linda, Mike, and even the strangers-turned-friends who had cheered her on during Heroes Night. By the time the event wound down, the diner was filled with laughter and warmth. As the last guests trickled out, Linda hugged Lisa tightly. "You were incredible tonight," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Lisa hugged her back, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. Thanks, Linda. I couldn't have done any of this without you, or everyone else who's been here for me. Mike lingered behind, helping clean up despite Linda's protests. Go home and rest, she told him with a smile. You've earned it. Mike chuckled, setting down a stack of plates. Nah, I'm good. Besides, it feels nice to pitch in. Lisa joined them, grabbing a broom to sweep the floor. Together, the three of them worked quietly, the bond between them stronger than ever. When the diner was finally spotless, they locked up and stepped outside. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves. Stars dotted the sky, twinkling like tiny sparks of hope. For a moment, none of them spoke, content to simply stand there and soak in the peacefulness of the night. Finally, Mike broke the silence. You know, I used to think heroes were these larger-than-life figures like in movies or books. But now I realize they're just regular people who choose to do the right thing, even when it's hard. Linda nodded in agreement, and Lisa smiled softly, gazing up at the stars. Maybe we're all heroes in our own stories, she said quietly. And maybe that's enough. The weeks following Heroes' Night brought a renewed sense of purpose to the people of Maplewood. The event had sparked something in the town, a collective realization that kindness and courage weren't just abstract ideas, but actions anyone could take. For Lisa, the change was especially profound. She no longer saw herself as just a waitress at Linda's place. She began to see herself as someone who mattered, someone capable of making an impact. It wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic moments. It was about the small, everyday choices that added up over time. Linda noticed the shift in Lisa's attitude almost immediately. Gone was the hesitation in her step, replaced by a quiet confidence that radiated from within. Lisa started engaging more with customers, asking them about their days and sharing stories of her own. She even began volunteering at the local food bank on her days off, inspired by the idea of giving back to the community that had supported her during tough times. Linda often teased her, saying, "Looks like we've got ourselves a regular superhero around here." Lisa would laugh, brushing off the compliment, but deep down she felt proud of the person she was becoming. Mike, too, found himself embracing this new mindset. Tutoring kids at the community center had opened his eyes to the power of mentorship. He realized that being a hero didn't mean wearing a cape or saving the world in one fell swoop. It meant showing up consistently, listening when others needed to be heard, and offering guidance when it was most needed. One evening, as he helped Ethan solve a particularly tricky algebra problem, Mike felt a surge of gratitude. He hadn't expected volunteering to bring him so much joy, but it had become one of the most fulfilling parts of his life. Word of Lisa's involvement at the food bank spread quickly, drawing attention from other townsfolk who wanted to join. And soon, a group of volunteers formed, meeting every Saturday morning to sort donations and pack meals for families in need. Among them was Sarah Bennett, a retired school teacher who had lived in Maplewood her entire life. She admired Lisa's dedication and often praised her for stepping up. "You're setting a fine example for the younger generation," Sarah said one morning as they worked side by side. Lisa blushed, shaking her head modestly. "I'm just doing what feels right," she replied. Back at the diner, business continued to thrive. Customers came not only for the food, but also for the atmosphere of warmth and camaraderie that had grown stronger since the biker incident. Strangers became friends, exchanging stories and laughter over plates of pancakes and cups of coffee. Even Mayor Peterson stopped by occasionally, joking that Linda's place was the unofficial town hall. Linda loved the energy, often staying late to chat with patrons and ensure everyone felt welcome. One chilly November afternoon, a man named Daniel walked into the diner. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a kind face and gentle eyes. Though he looked out of place among the regulars, he greeted everyone warmly as he took a seat at the counter. Lisa approached him with her usual smile. "Hi there. What can I get you today?" she asked. Daniel glanced at the menu before answering. "Just a cup of coffee, please, and maybe a slice of pie if you've got any left." As Lisa poured his coffee, Daniel struck up a conversation. "So I hear this place has quite the reputation," he said, his tone light and curious. Lisa laughed softly, setting the mug in front of him. "Yeah, we've had our share of excitement lately," she admitted. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Care to share?" Lisa hesitated briefly before launching into the story of the biker incident, the tension, the fear, and how John Cena had stepped in to defend her. As she spoke, Daniel listened intently, nodding occasionally. When she finished, he smiled. "That's quite a tale," he said. "Sounds like you handled yourself with a lot of grace under pressure." Lisa shrugged modestly. "I guess I did okay, but honestly, it was Cena who made the biggest difference." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Still, not everyone would have kept going after something like that. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for." His words struck a chord with Lisa, reminding her of the note she carried in her apron pocket. "Be brave. Stand tall. You are stronger than you think." She smiled, feeling a renewed sense of determination. Over the next few weeks, Daniel became a regular at the diner. He often sat at the counter chatting with Lisa and Linda about everything from books to travel. It turned out he was passing through Maplewood on a road trip, exploring small towns across the country. "There's something special about places like this," he explained one day. "People care about each other. It's refreshing." His presence brought a fresh perspective to the diner, sparking lively discussions and debates among the staff and customers. Mike, who had initially been wary of newcomers after the biker incident, warmed up to Daniel quickly. They bonded over their shared love of classic rock music and spent hours debating which band was the greatest of all time. "Led Zeppelin, hands down," Mike declared one afternoon. Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. "Sorry, man, but Pink Floyd takes the crown." Despite his laid-back demeanor, Daniel had a way of inspiring those around him. He encouraged Lisa to pursue her dream of starting a community garden, offering practical advice and even pitching in to help clear the land behind the diner. Together, they rallied volunteers to plant flowers, vegetables, and herbs, transforming the empty lot into a vibrant green space. On weekends, families gathered there to relax, children played tag among the plants, and elderly residents sat on benches, enjoying the fresh air. The garden quickly became a symbol of hope and unity in Maplewood. As winter approached, the town prepared for its annual holiday festival. Strings of lights adorned Main Street, and shop windows were decorated with festive displays. Linda decided to host a special breakfast event at the diner, inviting everyone to come together and celebrate the season. Flyers went up around town, promising hot cocoa, carols singing, and homemade cinnamon rolls. The response was overwhelming, with nearly the entire town turning out for the occasion. On the morning of the event, Lisa arrived early to help set up. She hung garlands along the walls and arranged tables near the windows so guests could enjoy the view of the snow-covered streets. By the time the doors opened, the diner was filled with the scent of freshly baked goods and the sound of cheerful chatter. Families bundled in scarves and coats streamed inside, their faces glowing with excitement. Mayor Peterson kicked off the festivities with a short speech, thanking the community for coming together and praising the spirit of generosity that defined Maplewood. "This town is proof that kindness matters," he said, raising his mug of hot cocoa and a toast. The crowd cheered, clinking mugs and glasses in celebration. Linda joined in, her eyes shining with pride. "To heroes big and small," she exclaimed, prompting another round of applause. Throughout the morning, Lisa moved between tables, refilling drinks and delivering plates of food. She paused occasionally to admire the scene, the laughter, the smiles, the sense of connection that filled the room. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly content. This was her home, her community, and she was grateful to be a part of it. Later that afternoon, as the event wound down, Daniel pulled Lisa aside. "I've been thinking," he began, his expression serious, yet kind. "You've done so much for this town, starting the garden, volunteering at the food bank, standing up for yourself. You inspire people without even realizing it." Lisa blinked, caught off guard by the compliment. "I don't know about that," she said softly. I'm just trying to do my part. Daniel smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. Sometimes, doing your part is exactly what makes you extraordinary. His words lingered in Lisa's mind long after he left Maplewood to continue his travels. She thought about them often, finding comfort and strength in their simplicity. As the year drew to a close, the people of Maplewood reflected on all they had accomplished together. The diner remained the heart of the town, a place where strangers became friends and ordinary people discovered their capacity for greatness. Mike continued tutoring at the community center, Lisa tended to the thriving garden, and Linda welcomed everyone with open arms, ensuring that Linda's place remained a haven of warmth and kindness. And though John Cena had long since moved on, his legacy lived on, not just in the stories told about him but in the lives he had touched. In Maplewood, heroes weren't defined by fame or fortune. They were defined by the choices they made, the love they shared, and the courage they showed when it mattered most. As winter settled over Maplewood, the town embraced the season with its usual charm. Snow blanketed the streets, turning the once brown lawns into sparkling white carpets. The community garden behind Linda's place lay dormant beneath a thick layer of frost, its plants resting until spring would bring them back to life. But even in the quiet stillness of winter, the spirit of the town remained vibrant. People gathered around fire pits in their backyards, shared warm meals with neighbors, and found joy in the simple pleasures of the holidays. Lisa spent her days balancing work at the diner and volunteering at the food bank. She had grown accustomed to the rhythm of her new routine, finding fulfillment in both roles. At the diner, she greeted customers with genuine warmth, knowing many of them by name. At the food bank, she organized donations, packed boxes, and handed out supplies to families who needed extra help during the colder months. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. People often thanked her, telling her how much her kindness meant to them. Each compliment filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt before. One snowy afternoon, as Lisa swept the sidewalk outside the diner, she spotted Mike walking toward her. He wore a heavy coat and carried a bag filled with books. "Hey, Lisa," he called out, his breath visible in the cold air. "Got a minute?" "Sure," Lisa replied, leaning the broom against the wall. "What's up?" Mike pulled a book from the bag and handed it to her. It was a worn copy of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. "I thought you might like this," he said, smiling shyly. "It's about following your dreams and finding your treasure, not just in the world, but within yourself." Lisa took the book, touched by the gesture. "Thanks, Mike, that's really thoughtful." She flipped through the pages, noticing notes scribbled in the margins. "Did you read this?" "Yeah, I did," Mike admitted. "And honestly, it reminded me of you. You've been chasing your own treasure this whole time. You just didn't realize it yet." Lisa chuckled softly, tucking the book under her arm. "Well, I'll definitely give it a try, thanks again." Mike nodded, then glanced toward the garden. "How's the cleanup going? Need any help?" "Actually, yeah," Lisa said. "We're trying to clear some of the snow off the beds so we can prep for spring planting. If you've got some free time, that'd be great." "Count me in," Mike replied. "I'll grab my shovel and meet you there in a bit." Later that day, Lisa and Mike worked side by side, clearing snow and checking on the soil beneath. Despite the biting wind, they laughed and joked, sharing stories about their childhoods and dreams for the future. Lisa talked about her vision for the garden, a space where everyone could come together, no matter their background or circumstances. Mike listened intently, nodding along. "You've got big plans," he said. "I think you'll make it happen." "I hope so," Lisa replied, brushing snow off her gloves. "But it's not just about me, it's about all of us. This town has taught me that we're stronger when we work together." Their conversation shifted to the diner, and Mike confessed that he'd started thinking about ways to give back even more. "Maybe I'll organize a fundraiser for the community center," he mused. "Something fun, like a trivia night or a karaoke contest." Lisa grinned. "That sounds awesome. Let me know if you need help. I'm always up for singing off-key." By the time they finished shoveling, the sun had begun to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Lisa stood back, admiring their handiwork. "Thanks for helping today, Mike. I couldn't have done it without you." "No problem," Mike said, slinging his shovel over his shoulder. "Besides, it feels good to pitch in. Like you said, we're stronger together." The weeks leading up to Christmas were busy but joyful. Linda decorated the diner with twinkling lights and garlands, creating a cozy atmosphere that drew in crowds of locals eager to escape the chill. Families came for breakfast after ice skating at the park. Couples stopped by for hot chocolate on date nights, and kids pressed their noses against the glass display case, marveling at the homemade gingerbread cookies. Even Mayor Peterson made frequent appearances, chatting with patrons and spreading holiday cheer. On Christmas Eve, Linda hosted a special dinner for anyone who wanted to join. The menu featured roast turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, and pumpkin pie, all served family style at long tables pushed together in the center of the room. The diner buzzed with laughter and conversation, the sound of clinking glasses and happy voices filling the air. Lisa moved between tables, refilling drinks and delivering plates, her cheeks flushed with happiness. At one point, Linda stepped onto a chair to address the crowd. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she said, her voice warm and steady. "This past year has been full of challenges, but we've faced them together, with courage, kindness, and love. So let's raise our glasses to Maplewood, to friendship, and to the heroes among us." Everyone cheered, raising their mugs and glasses in a toast. After the meal, guests lingered, reluctant to leave the warmth of the diner. Children played hide and seek among the booths, while adults exchanged gifts and shared memories. Lisa sat at a corner table with Mike, sipping hot cocoa and watching the scene unfold. "This is nice," she said softly. "It feels like home." "It does," Mike agreed. "And it's because of people like you, Lisa. You've brought so much goodness into this town." Lisa shook her head modestly. "I'm just doing what feels right. We all are." As midnight approached, the diner slowly emptied. Guests hugged Linda goodbye, thanking her for the wonderful evening. Lisa stayed behind to help clean up, humming along to the soft Christmas music playing in the background. When everything was tidy, she wrapped herself in her coat and stepped outside. The snow sparkled under the streetlights and the air smelled crisp and clean. She walked home slowly, taking in the beauty of the quiet town. Along the way, she passed the community garden, now covered in a fresh blanket of snow. Stopping for a moment, she gazed at the barren plots, imagining how vibrant they would look in the spring. She thought about all the people who had pitched in to create the garden, Linda, Mike, Daniel, Sarah, and countless others, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. When she reached her apartment, Lisa placed the book Mike had given her on her nightstand. She opened it to the first page and smiled at the inscription he had written. "To Lisa, a true treasure seeker. Keep shining." Closing the book, she climbed into bed, feeling content and hopeful. The next morning, Christmas Day, Lisa woke up early to the sound of carolers singing outside her window. She dressed warmly and joined her neighbors for a walk through town, stopping to admire the decorations and exchange greetings. Later, she attended a small gathering at Linda's place, where leftover desserts from the previous night were served, alongside steaming cups of coffee. As the day wound down, Lisa reflected on everything that had happened over the past year. From the terrifying encounter with the bikers to the inspiring arrival of John Cena, from the formation of the community garden to the countless acts of kindness she had witnessed, she realized how much she had grown, not just as a person, but as part of something bigger than herself. That evening, as she sat by her window watching the snowfall, Lisa pulled out the note she kept in her apron pocket. "Be brave, stand tall, you are stronger than you think." She smiled, folding the paper carefully and tucking it away. She didn't need to read it anymore. The words were etched in her heart. In Maplewood, life continued to move forward, shaped by the choices of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Heroes weren't defined by fame or fortune. They were defined by the love they shared, the courage they showed, and the connections they built. And though John Cena had long since moved on, his actions had planted a seed. a reminder that standing up for what's right could inspire others to do the same. As the clock struck midnight, signaling the start of a new year, Lisa closed her eyes and whispered a silent wish. Here's to being brave, standing tall, and making a difference one small step at a time.